Hello there. Today I want to show how you can make a curved axe handle using a saw, a chisel with a mallet, a knife and a planer. This baby axe was brought me, and I was asked to change its handle. So let's get started. At the moment of sawing off the handle, you need to be careful. The metal wedges hammered into the handle can be long enough to trip over when sawing and dull the saw teeth. I had such a situation when restoring a hammer. Therefore, when sawing, reaching the middle of the thickness, it is advisable to slow down sawing and, at the slightest hint of metal wedges, stop completely and start sawing from the other side. The purpose of such small dimensions is unknown to me. I suspect that initially its handle was longer, but over time it broke, and it was simply shortened. The shape of the blade seemed rather ugly to me, so I decided to make my own adjustments. First, an extra fragment of the blade is filed several times with a thin cutting wheel. Then diagonally sawn parts are cut off. This axe was not pre-hardened, but I still periodically dipped it in cold water to cool it down when sawing. After cutting off the excess, the surface is cleaned with a thick grinding wheel. Important, you can't do this in a thin cutting wheel, due to security reasons. Also, with a thick wheel, the rest of the surface of the axe is cleaned. Next, the surface of the axe is polished with a nozzle with 120 grit sandpaper. After cleaning with sandpaper, we have the following result. When making an axe handle, it is important to choose the right wood. Usually for this, I use Robinia, or Ailanthus wood, Chinese ash. This time I took a piece of maple that was the right size. The manufacture of a curved handle is complicated by the fact that it is impossible to perform curved cuts with a hand saw, due to the width of the saw blade. Sawing with a hand jigsaw with a narrow blade is difficult and time-consuming. Of the power tools for this operation, a handheld electric jigsaw and a bandsaw are well suited. You can manually cut off excess pieces of wood using a chisel. First, in the deepest places of the curved line, cuts are made with a hacksaw to further facilitate the work with the chisel. Further, layer by layer, excess fragments of wood are cut off. A chisel with the curved blade profile works well for this operation, but a regular flat chisel can also be used. When reaching the lower point of the curved cavity, it is more convenient to turn the workpiece and start to go deeper in the other direction. The same operation is carried out on the other side of the curvature of the handle. After rough work with the chisel, the surface is turned with a short two-handed planer. As where the blade of the planer does not reach, a thin sharp knife works. Further, the corner of these surfaces will be ground. However, at this stage it is important to give them the correct shape, so that further rounding is symmetrical, along the entire length of the handle. After the formation of the surfaces, it is necessary to draw parallel guides, along which the corners of the handle will be ground off in the future. For each such angle, there are two guides on two different surfaces. It is convenient to carry out the procedure for cutting corners with a knife, after attaching the axe handle to the table with a clamp. As with working with a planer, it is just as important to remember the direction of the fibers in the wood, when working with a knife. When cutting against the fibers, the knife can go too deep into the wood and cause unwanted chips. If the width of the handle is greater than the hole in the axe itself, then it is best to make small transverse cuts on the handle, and cut the rest with a knife or chisel. As in the case of a hammer, you first need to gradually reduce the dimensions of the sitting place, focusing on the shape of the lug drawn on the end. Excess wood of the sitting place is cut off with a chisel. If the preliminary transverse cuts were made correctly, the chisel will not go too deep into the wood, and will not ruin the axe handle. After the first fitting of the axe, traces remain on the wood, which are good to navigate for the further formation of the sitting place. With these marks, you can cut off excess wood more accurately. To prevent the handle from cracking when wedging, it is necessary to pre-drill through holes at the sitting place. After that, parallel cuts are made to form a slot for a wooden wedge. It is very desirable that the walls of the slot formed be as flat as possible, which subsequently press as tightly as possible against the wedge. All rough bumps on the handle, remaining after planing, are removed with sandpaper 200. Since next I will completely paint the handle, I need to saw off and clean off the excess wood on the heel of the handle now. To give the wood a rich red color, I use stationery ink. After the ink is completely dry, the black gradient is applied with black spray paint. After the paint has dried, we have the following result. According to the project, cross pins must be present in the handle. They do not perform any functional role, but are only decorative. After installing the pins, it's time to install the axe. First, the slots for the wedges are smeared with wood glue. Then the axe itself is planted. Further, the central, longitudinal, wedge is driven all the way. After it, transverse wedges are inserted in turn, to a shallow depth. After inserting the transverse wedges, they must be hammered into the stop, inflicting in turn one blow with a hammer on each of the transverse wedges. A day later, after the glue dries, you need to saw off the excess part of the wedges and the sitting place. New sections of the handle must be cleaned of the remnants of dried glue. Cleaned with sandpaper and painted. Also, after the glue dries, you need to saw off the extra parts of the decorative pins. Since it was not possible to simply cut the pins, I had to clean them with sandpaper and repaint the handle. After the paint has completely dried, a transparent varnish for wood is applied. To prevent the metal from rusting longer, varnish is applied to the metal too. After 2 coats of varnish, we have this result. And finally, a demonstration video of the direct work of a grown-up baby axe.